Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Zero Events, our live series where we explore about evolving world of extended reality and immersive technology. I'm Sonia, and I will be your host for today. If you're joining us from LinkedIn or YouTube, feel free to drop a hello in the chat. Let us know what do you do, why this topic matters to you, and of course, if you have any question, send it to us, and we will pick it up along the way for our speaker. Today's conversation dives into a topic that's becoming more and more relevant for cultural institutions, creators, and immersive storytelling alike, which was also the big question that were asked in the Museum Next conference this year. How can museum, cultural space, and heritage institution unlock the power of an immersive technology to bring what they have on the wall into a whole new experience? And what if they don't have a big teams or an external agency or a complex technical resources and the list goes on? I work with different teams, developers and clients, and I just know how challenging that gap could be like between technical overhead and creative storytelling. And to unpack this, I'm thrilled to welcome Annabell Vacano, founder of Atopia Space. She's here to talk about how their no-code toolkit products are designed specifically with features for museums and cultural institutions, empowering them to create their own immersive exhibition independently. Hi, Annabelle. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sonia, and thank you so much for being here and a great introduction. Yeah, you're completely right in what you explained. There's such a big gap between what's possible right now in technology and what's actually feasible and achievable. So I'm really happy about the session and to be your guest today.
I'm really excited to understand about like Atopia Space like a lot more. So let's start with like a very grounding questions, right? For those who's actually discovering Atopia Space for a very first time on these platforms, could you explain what is it, why you created it, and what specific challenge that you're seeing in the museum and cultural sector that leads you to building Atopia Space?
Of course, happy to. So art and culture is something that, people across the world are passionate about. At the same time, at the moment, it's just still very inaccessible. I mean, on the one hand, we have actually hundreds of millions of people who are restricted to access institutions in their area, maybe
Yeah.
because they just live in a rural area or they're not so mobile. But even more so, there's so many great institutions, and I think museums especially are a great tool for intercultural learning and education and building sensibility. At the same time, who can travel to all of them? If you're not at a certain location, it's usually very tricky to get to know. At the same time, museums are under very high expectation and big pressure from the public, from their funders, the audiences, to put or like to create digital tools that make these stories more accessible, that make them relevant for younger audiences, and just keep at the pulse of time. While at the same time, museums often have usually comparatively small teams, small budgets, and yeah, really, really high expectations from the public. Um, where we come from is the gaming sector and VR, and we saw this huge potential in virtual worlds and immersive technology to, for the first time, actually make true cultural experiences. So really, this feeling of a self-directed story of an um, immersive learning experience accessible to anyone across the world. For institutions, I mean, there's been a lot of experiments in the sector because it really does not only make a museum accessible to the world, it can also, engage the digital native generation. It can create entirely new formats. You don't have to use, physical constraints anymore for curating, but you have complete creative freedom. You can showcase theoretically your whole collection. On average, museums only have 5% of their amazing collections on view because, there's
Oh,
just limited space. And yeah, just also be present where young audiences are more and more apparent. If you look at Roblox and Fortnite, it's really becoming the new kind of social stage where young people spend their time. At the same time, as you mentioned, as an institution doing such a project previously would have taken months, if not years. Um,
yeah.
at least 5-figure budgets, more likely mid to high 6-figure budgets, to get something good, a huge project team, and in the end you end up with a one-off project that you can showcase on site, and then after a few months, it just disappears. What we try to create with Atopia is an infrastructure to really make it possible for museums of all sizes, all regions, all topics to very easily create these exhibitions in-house, not having to work with, an agency on a one-off project, but actually have something that hands the power of virtual creation directly into the hands of the curators and the storytellers in-house, and allows museums to create unlimited virtual exhibitions that they can then publish in one click, both on a web browser for maximal accessibility, that they can embed on the website. It works like a game a little bit, and also directly works on kind of the most common VR headsets, and that they can share that on site, but especially obviously also reach people in their homes with these
Outside,
immersive
yeah.
experiences.
Oh, okay. So that's really interesting. This idea that you said about that balancing between like the what the museum have and not only have like a one-off things and also something they can like refurbish supposedly like to keep on re-showcasing them. Like this is very interesting. Um, but while we're going into like this refurb, like the idea of like this refurbish, right? Like so that they can keep on using like the same infrastructure for different things again and again. I think like one of like the big challenge of like a no code platforms is actually like maintaining a unique storytelling, like without needing like a big thing. You said it yourself, like sometimes like they create like an experience. It takes a year to make them, and then after a while, like it's there in their library and nobody wants to see them anymore. Like from my experience, I can see how daunting it can be for like museums, for example, cultural institution, as they're a public sector, so they tend to be not to want to be the first one to try this kind of technology. Definitely they want to be the second one and not the last one. So how can like you people or like these people who are within this institution, right, like use Atopia to balance that, like create something immersive but also a unique storytelling without the technical overhead. And if they don't need the developers, I guess in this case, what you're saying, who do they need like in their team to help build this with to take advantage of Atopia's features?
Of course, maybe it helps most to quickly share how curation actually looks on
Sure,
our
that would be so
platform, and I
great.
will try to share my screen. So, all right. So with Atopia, as explained already, I mean, the first question you have to ask yourself is, what's the space that you want to exhibit in? Should it be something like a digital twin, or could it be maybe something completely different? Here, for instance, you see an outside exhibition taking place in a desert environment, and it could be any environment that you use. At the same time, here you see, for instance, what the Agora Kunsthaus just launched on Atopia. Oops, had my tab open for too long. So this is more like a digital twin. There's a lot of different options for this. And as an institution and a curator, the first thing to ask yourself, especially for starting, for instance, small with a pilot, is what do we actually want to convey? What's kind of our biggest use case with this? Do we just want to, showcase more collections that we don't have on view? Or do we want to create like a really tailored, really special exhibition? Now, how the process looks like, this is a horrible set of artworks, but I think it helps to just show it. The editor that we created for curators is really super, super simple to use. So you can really just put an
Drag
artwork, you
and
can
drop
upload,
them.
drag and drop exactly. You can, edit the frames. You can edit all the meta information that you want to add, and it's really made so that you don't need any technical knowledge. You can add 3D artworks as well, and place them, rotate them, and basically upload your whole collection, and very freely adapted. Now, you asked a very good question, which was about the mix of simplicity and kind of curational depth. And that's definitely also one of the big the big problems or like the big issues that we're coming from. And one of the big focus areas why we as Atopia also only focus on cultural storytelling. And, we don't do everything. We just focus on this one thing. And because it is true. I mean, if you want full creative freedom, you have platforms like Unity. You just need, a few years, if not
Yeah.
decades of training in that and probably a big team to make that happen. I mean, you're an expert, Sonia, so you know that. At the same time, if you want to create something that's simple, you have to really think about carefully what do you enable and kind of how do you build on top of that. What we've been doing there with Atopia is we started, really small, really try to identify together with museums what's the most important first steps that they need, which is obviously high quality artwork optics. For instance, on Atopia, if you upload a 2D painting, we create normal maps and shaders, which basically is a description of it makes your paint strokes pop out a bit more and really achieve this quality. 3D artworks, we have a bunch of art interaction features that always work. So whenever a user walks to your artwork, you have this beautiful pop-up for the title, and you can actually jump inside and watch the artwork close. You can put it in your hands and rotate with it. So it's really about, first of all, close looking and putting the art in the center. But one of the big things that we're also in the process of co-developing with some very big institutions, are more deep interaction features. So something you will see coming up in a few weeks actually will be, for instance, a way for social community notes that users can actually leave some thoughts and other users can listen to it. It's the option to have multimodal story pop-ups. So that's, for instance, a base for a audio guide that you could create, but also something that just pops up videos in front of the users of 3D objects or related things. Up to, we have a small AI curator that you can ask any question. So as you see, it's really trying to balance what is the reality for curators, what is just also the reality of what they need to achieve, what they use frequently, and trying to tie that into a system that makes it very easy for more institutions to use it, to drag and drop it.
So I guess in this case, like what they need is actually, of course, they need their curators, which a museum already has, and then they use the platforms. And before they use the platforms, which means their curator is the person who create the storytelling, as if like they're actually doing it in a common physical space, and how they bring them into the a chosen environments and how they walk through like the user experience. So which means the main asset here is the same. The main asset is the curator, like how which is they already have it over there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's similar. I mean, you can also in the physical space, you can curate exhibitions extremely engaging, and you can curate exhibitions more on a self-directed flow. You can also do a good and a bad job in that. If we're just speaking frankly, the same obviously accounts to virtual exhibitions. Just placing objects in a room will not make the experience interesting to users. It's always about the story that you're telling. It's always about the relevancy of the objects and a few more things, and kind of these more medium specific things like ensuring things are interactable, ensuring the user experience feels smooth. This is the things that we take care of. We still need the curator for ensuring that the story is relevant, that it makes sense, and
Yeah,
it
for
just
sure.
captures the interest of the user.
You mentioned about like um Atopia Space is actually there's a reason why Atopia Space actually focus on like the cultural storytelling, right? Now, when you say that, that means that you guys are looking into all the possible assets that the cultural institution could have or could already have behind. And that would mean like their audio guides, their archives, their 2D, their 3D, like, and all of this, right? And so I guess with that, their curators would go into dealing with like different layered narratives, like from personal stories, historical context, and then only you go into like the interactive elements. And I guess in this part, like I'm really touching the depth of the features that the platform have. Can you show us like in a way like how like a creators or a curators in the in this cultural institution can make this exhibition that feels unique, like in its own way?
I can show that in a few weeks. I'm unfortunately not allowed to share something yet, as it's not yet live. But yeah, right now, as mentioned, it's something that we usually do with curators together. So with institutions, we help them set up these extra features. But it is step by step coming into the build as well, so that institutions can do that. But in the end, as mentioned, in the end, what counts is the storytelling. So as an institution, you can think to yourself, okay, here's kind of maybe the collection I want to show. I have these audio guides maybe already, and you can decide where to place them, where to put them, and yeah. So
It would be super great, like I think to when we finally can be able to see it, because I think like most of the things that happens is that we have an idea how it might look like, but then like when you really like go into it like with the asset that you have, right? And you're like, oh yes, okay, this is how I can do it.
mm,
So, okay, in that case, like I'm actually curious, like how up until today, right? Like how are different groups, like from either individual creators, artists, or maybe educators, to museums, or even SME, I guess in this case, yeah. We do have a lot of like SME spectacles in our audience. Uh, if suppose like they want to use Atopia space today, what are the typical journey for them? Like, what type of immersive exhibition are they creating up until now?
of course. So the journey is actually, especially for smaller organizations and even like individual artists we already host on our website, very easy. So you basically can choose from a variety of different architectures or kind of rooms, galleries from our site. You choose one that you like, you upload your collections, and you upload your kind of metadata, everything you want to showcase, start curating, and then when you're ready, you just press publish. We will need to review everything to ensure that community guidelines are all there and
Are
there's no
met.
harassing content. But then
So you
it's
guys
live.
have
So
templates.
yes, exactly.
Okay, so within the templates, they can choose what they want and then just bring in their either 2D or 3D in this case. What about like those artists that are like I know there are a lot of like a 3D artists like industrial designers, and things like this that are wanting to use the platforms even like to
Mhm.
showcase what they make. What about the technical format that they can use inside these
That's a
platforms?
great point. And I personally think that probably 3D immersive art, so like these actual 3D artworks that stand for themselves, is probably one of the biggest category we will see on the rise in this century. So
I think
one
so
of my
too. Yeah.
personal, yeah, there's awesome works out there. So Atopia is based on Unity. While we are working on an SDK, it's not yet finished, so that's something for the future. But we love to work directly with artists like that, and if you have something that runs in Unity, we can quite easily plug it in and make it both accessible as a template if you want, but also obviously if it stands for itself, you can just have that running on the platform. So that's something right now, especially if there's like amazing artworks, we do that usually in a collaboration and a partnership. Going forward, the goal is to have an SDK to really make it more accessible to anyone to just plug their artworks in as well.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting. That's really, really nice. Which means that, well, most of like a 3D artists, like they do have their art piece like over there, like sculpture, and things like this. What they don't have is like they don't know how to use Unity in this case.
Mm.
And this is like the big problem, I think, even with like a lot of like cultural institution as well. uh, like I work with like some of like the cultural clients, and whenever I go into the meeting, there's always like, okay, who do we need, like what do we need to do, and they're already worried even like to try immersive technology, even like they really want to, like thinking about like all the things that they need to take care, like
Mm.
the team, the agency, all of those things. And that also goes with like the industrial designers and every 3D designers. Okay, so in this case, that when they actually already choose their template, they put in their things. When so we're actually editing this in browser.
Exactly. So we're based on Unity, but you will never see anything that resembles Unity on our platform, because we're
I
really
think that
trying to
that's a
make it
good thing,
simple.
I guess.
Well, I mean, Unity is an amazing tool, and it can do so much more than we will ever be able to do. I mean, that's always a choice you have to do.
Of course.
Do you make something for experts, or do you make something that the general public should be able to use? So I'm a big fan of Unity, but in our case, yeah, you just open a link, log in, and can get started. And what you mentioned with especially assets and Unity and getting it going, you're completely right. Like so many institutions already have large parts of their collections digitized, even as 3D objects is like a very big push that we're seeing right now. Almost any institution I'm speaking to currently has projects of digitizing their 3D collections with
Yeah,
photogrammetry or similar. And at Atopia, you just need a GLB file. So that's like one of the most standard 3D
it's very
object files,
standard.
and you upload it. And that's how it works. So it's more inspired by Sims. I don't know if you know that it's like a small
Of course.
small game.
Yes.
So it's really really easy, really simple, and yeah, just made to be quick, don't require training, and be done by the people in-house directly.
Yeah. Today I almost see like almost every museum, like almost even a very small museum, they have like a page even in Sketchfab, which means like they're already virtualizing their objects, which means they already have like what they need to go into like immersive experience, right? Okay. So now that they're actually doing it like they're doing the drag and drop in the browser, and then they publish it. And when they publish it, I guess that becomes a link and they can share it like everywhere. My question would be this. Um, for the people who are doing this, so they're doing this one time, but they're actually publishing it as well or not to for the headset use.
So it's immediately working across devices. That's the nice thing. You don't have to worry about anything. As Atopia, we're a platform first of all. So as soon as you press publish, it's in our VR app on a Meta Quest store, which is a little bit like a Netflix for the art, we like to call it, and on our website. So you also get visibility and network effects from being present with other institutions. And at the same time, you can also just like embed it onto your own websites quite easily. So really the whole distribution setup, you don't need to worry about anything. You can choose it as you wish, but all the options are open to you.
That's super great. Which means I can also take that link and open that like as a web XR, right? Like in the browser, in the headset as well, I
I
guess.
actually did not try that, but I think it should work.
Because I think like if it works in browser, it should work the same
It
in web
usually does.
XR as well. Yeah.
But for the best
Okay.
experience, I would still recommend doing the VR app because all of our
Oh,
UI
of
is
course. Yeah, yeah.
split. So we have like special UI for VR use, special UI for web. This is honestly, this cross-platform support is one of the biggest complexities that we took on internally. But it's just so important. I mean, VR is for sure the future. We also see a change in visitor or like in user behavior. At the same time, it's not yet really accessible. And we're talking about accessibility here. So web browser is just so important. But yeah, if you
Yeah.
try it in
Yeah.
VR, maybe try it on the app, then everything will work perfectly.
I think like based on like some of the experience that I've tried, I've not tried like Atopia, of course. Like when they work in the browser, they do work as well in the WebXR. It's just that the application definitely would have like in terms of user interaction, things
Mhm.
like that. It would be better in the application than WebXR. We have a lot of like limitation, but if it's only like to look around and to just like a very limited interaction, yes,
Mhm.
you can actually do that as well. Okay. Okay, so that's super great, which means that with one curation, they actually not only go into like a web XR experience, but also headset experience, and then they can choose like how they want to distribute that.
Exactly. And also one of the last important things that we had to support there is obviously also you get a lot of information about your users. So we have a very sophisticated analytics suite. So every
Cool.
curator
Okay.
can directly see the success of their project. Where do the people come from? Which countries do they log in from? How many visited it? How long did they spend? So that's also, you can also switch how many of them came with a VR headset, how many came over the web browser. So yeah, that's all then
Okay. So
from
you
one
guys
click
have a
available.
dashboard.
Yeah,
So you guys have a dashboard, and then they can create like their how many space that they want in there. Like each of the space has their own analytics. and then they can have their like data, like who goes in there and everything.
Exactly,
I
that's the
think
case.
I think that's like a very good that's the proof that the every institution need to actually like keep on doing this, or to know like, oh, how can I make this better? Because I think that tends to be the questions of every meeting, like, okay, like how do we measure KPI
Mm.
into this experience? Okay, up until now, right? Like based on like what the features that at least you guys have already produced and what you guys see up until now, what kind of use cases that you guys are seeing in the market of people who are using Atopia, or who are actually coming to say, "Hey, I'm interested to use Atopia," is to give an idea, like to for people who are thinking, the platform is cool, but what can I do with it?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I mean, we do focus on cultural experiences. That's a very broad term. So it can be everything. I always describe it as meaningful, educative or artistic experiences. So anything in that realm for me, I would personally define as culture. And we do only do that. So if anyone wants to do, let's say, a pure branding e-commerce shop, we wouldn't do that. That's the first thing to say. But in that sector, as mentioned, it's super broad. We see actually a lot of different groups and people interested. The first one that we start with is obviously kind of the museum sector, because they have centuries in experience in how to tell
Yes, yeah.
stories in 3D rooms. Interestingly, actually, if you look at some of the very early game design research, a lot of it was sometimes based on curatorial research and best practices. That's it's very interesting because it's big similarity. So they have a lot of experience. They usually have a big need and kind of also big pressure to do these experiences, and also a lot of just knowledge on how to do it in a good way. However, what we also have been seeing is, for instance, individual artists saying, hey, they're going to a conference next week and they can only bring two
Oh,
artworks.
okay. Yeah.
They just place in all the artworks and take their VR headset with them, and then they can show people all of their collection or use it as a visibility point. We have seen educational projects. So, for instance, a research organization in Munich that does robotics research and AI, and basically focuses on autonomous factories, using Atopia to create, together with a big technical museum from Germany, an exhibition that explains the research both to the general public, but also to kind of stakeholders, to people who want to learn more about it in an easy and kind of more self-directed way. We've even
Ah,
seen, I
okay.
mean, exhibitions, I would say, is a format, it's a medium. Interestingly, we've seen actually physical exhibitions even being repurposed in journalism or similar, because it's a very interesting way of storytelling for kind of people who expect a self-directed experience. It's not like a video where you watch from start to finish, but it's something where you yourself choose how deep you want to go. And opening this format, because I mean, traditionally you need a big space for that, and a lot of resources to make that happen. Opening the space to the virtual and basically making it possible for anyone has opened also a lot of interest from foundations, NGOs, etc., that want to tell a story that didn't have the resources to do it before. And yeah, I'm especially
And now
excited also about
yeah.
powering these use cases and empowering the people to tell their stories, because often, especially these small ones and these more local communities, it's so interesting and you wouldn't get to see it otherwise.
Yeah, I never thought about like this robotic one, because I think at the end of the day it's yes, of course, that you guys are focusing on culture, but on an educational base there's a lot that you can do in there. Yeah, it's super interesting. What about community? How do you see, like, if there is like community out there that would like to use this? Like, is there like a certain use case of how you see that they can do it?
For sure. I mean, one thing that we see specifically, oh God, it does not refer to the project I'm not allowed to talk about, but you will see it in a few
Okay.
weeks. Often institutions, for instance, have objects that come from other areas, or maybe, they belong to a lot of different societies at the same time. It's like provenance is often not black and white, but rather like really hard. And we've seen, actually, we did a test last week where or we met with some communities from the original location where the artworks that were shown here in New York come from. And it was so exciting because you know you don't have to, it just makes it more accessible to the people where this comes from. It allows connection even if objects are touring or they're in a different place. So that's beautiful. Another thing, community, I mean, VR specifically, community is obviously always a huge, huge thing. So one of the big features I didn't mention yet with Atopia, because I feel like these days it should be built into every application, is we're obviously also multiplayer. So you can meet your friends here. You can also, as an institution, you can host tours, you can invite people over, and you see each other as like a avatar, and you can talk to each other, which really makes this experience also a bit more special and really social.
It's more
So
social. Yeah.
yeah, I hope this answers the question.
Yeah, it does. I think like now more and more like the museum are going into like this idea about like how do we make the space more community, more social, and more engaging. And with that, like all the educational and everything comes under that. And so I guess like that's the like to replicate that kind of things. Like Atopia must be thinking a lot also about like that infrastructure. I would like to ask you one question that's very difficult to answer, I think. but but I think it's a question that not only I tend to hear like in every meeting that I go to like for client meeting, but also I think if there are people who are watching this from a like a cultural institution and museum, right? I think they're also thinking about like, okay, how do I do this? And that question would be like, like all of the like exhibition, all this exhibition that we have, they have the same base, and the base is education. Like whatever is the exhibition, and then the same thing is the storytelling inside the museum, and the base is education. But like you said, they do have a lot of pressures, like into bringing people into their physical spaces, and this we already know.
Mhm.
And then we have this digital generation, like the new digital generation that I and even I would say it's not only like uh, generation Z or Alpha today. Like I would say like half of the millennials today are going into digital. But museum keep on having like this pressure to like, how do you bring this? How do you bring people into this? And then they're trying to find that balance, right? Uh,
Mhm.
whether you're answering this from Atopia's perspective or maybe your own perspective, right? Uh, how do you see like the immersive technology today uh, helping to bring people into the physical space? Like how do it give them that push of motivation?
Mhm. Yeah. So I think it's actually, if you think about using VR on site to bring people in, it's probably one of the best timings to do that, because it's still a technology. And the experience I've made, I've been with my mom the other day, who's a very undigital person, to the Tutankhamun exhibition that was based in Munich, and it's basically just showing a
Ah, yeah,
360-degree
yeah.
video. It's nicely done. My mom watched it, I think, 4 or 5 times, and I've experienced similar things with a lot of people. So it's a really interesting technology. Something, if you put it on, most people, like I would say 4/5 of people, are like have this magical moment, and they will talk about it forever. And they would, if they talk about it forever, they will bring all their friends and everyone else to also see your exhibition. So I think it's actually a really interesting time for on-site experimentation, which is
Like
again something that
location based.
especially exactly. At the same time, I think what's also important to say, I do not think that digital will ever replace the physical experience and the physical
Yeah,
visit.
no.
At the same time, most things that institutions do on Utopia do also not like do not try to do that. So often the environments in which things get curated are not digital twins, but it's actually completely new things. The collections that often get shown are collections that you couldn't see in the physical world. So it's even like a marketing instrument of exciting people abroad about your storytelling, your kind of your collections as well, and showing them more like a glimpse that they can then only see in full when they visit you on site. So I think this is the way that every institution should approach this topic and this question if it's a concern.
Yeah. Yeah. I do I think I do see this point of like it's like it's a marketing tools to reach to the digital generations, and that would give them like the push to like the motivation, right, to see the real thing.
That's true.
uh
Sorry if I
some
interrupt you super quickly, but I think one more interesting thing that we see a shift in is, however, right now how donors and kind of external stakeholders count digital visitors. So this number, like the digital visitor as a number, was completely irrelevant 10 years ago, but it gets more and more important. So
Okay.
this is also, I think, something that we will see a really big shift in the
More
next
and
years,
more.
and
Yeah.
expectation
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
I mean, the question is always how much is a digital visitor worth? It's like the same impact like a physical one at the moment. Surely not, but it does have a value. And I think figuring out what this value is for a public institution will be a very big task for the next years.
Yeah. I guess then that goes into like an add up KPI, right? Like into like how they see their data. Yeah, then okay, that's interesting. I some months ago I went to Zurich, and then like in Zurich they have this like Zurich Kunsthaus, and in that place they have all the different artworks like with transparency on provenance. And I didn't know actually about that museum. I went to see in Instagram, and I was like, okay, let me go and see it. And from from the surface, to be honest, like it looks like nothing. It looks like okay, this is another Kunsthaus over there. But when I went there, like, and this is only because like I tend to go to the museum, like I tend to visit like this place, and if not for the people who doesn't, and they might not go there. And when you actually go there, like the education that goes into like the different prominence is amazing. Like it's amazing, and I could really see like the I could really see like how the immersive experience like can be used to actually introduce that kind of exhibition to actually give people the push of like this is what's happening over there and go and visit them yourself. Like it's so amazing.
It's true. I mean, again, an exhibition in the digital space, you have so much more capacity, so you can really make an exhibition about any topic you like, even as you mentioned, maybe some research projects that are going on in your institution that are special and of special interest as well. So yeah, I love that point and that idea.
So we were talking about like some community, right? Like speaking of like different like groups and community, there is like one groups in LinkedIn. In the case of people who are interested like in knowing like a little bit more about like getting into like the special heritage, you know, and immersive experience for cultures, like there is a group in LinkedIn called the Special Heritage Review. um, they actually dedicate an intersection of like 3D technologies and heritage, and of course that includes like immersive technology. I didn't know about them like until some months ago, but then I started following them, and then I really got inspired about like what people are doing in the market and how and in their latest data, actually like most of their followers are people like coming from like the head of the museum.
Oh,
And
wow.
what we want to see is hey, like like you said, like maybe it could be like the new KPI for the next some years. And what they wanted to know, they wanted to see what's happening out there, what's happening in the cultural world, how what can I bring to my museum, and how do I define that new KPI. And I think that if people in that group would be super interested to know like what's like about Atopia space. But not only that, I think people who are starting to explore even immersive storytelling in heritage sector, it's really like a really nice place like to educate yourself what's going on out there, and how
Mhm.
I think the platforms like what you guys are making really making it like easier for people to take advantage of this technology.
It's exciting. We should maybe at some point have a little virtual conference with also some other people in the space to, yeah, just break down
Yeah,
the basics. That would be super fun.
I saw that they actually like reposted some of the features that you guys were doing about some weeks ago, but it was like a snippet or something like that. But
Mhm.
it was really nice. Okay, so my last questions, right? Uh, what's next for Atopia? Like any new features, partnerships, direction that I think could be very interesting for museums, creators, designers to go into the space and say, you know what, I'm going to take advantage of that features.
Yeah, for sure. So For the last year, and you know that, Sonia, because you've been involved, we've been working in very close partnership with one of the largest institutions in the world, which has been really, really great because it was a co-creation. So it means a lot of the features I've described today and that you will also soon see were actually designed together with their curators, really hands-on. And we got so much feedback, we learned so much, and it was really great because they're really trying to now test the ground and create a pilot that should have learnings for the whole sector. So that's something we've been really busy with and a little bit under the hoods. So this is coming to an end. And what I'm really particularly excited about is after this goes out, really, getting more partnerships, seeing where our solution, where the platform can actually create the most value, and especially also obviously focusing on the end user side. So how is this actually adopted by people? What do they spend most time in physical on-site demos? It's funny because especially in experiences where we have a lot of different features, everyone seems to love a different one. So there's people who, they just read all the text. They literally just enjoy reading the texts. And there's people who spend the whole time just like with one object for 15 minutes in focus view, and they just look at every angle, and they it's like a mask, and they put it on their head. And I didn't actually know that you can, do that, but they find out these days. And then there's people who
The
talk all the time with the
appropriation
AI.
of user, right?
Yeah, we do have measures to, to lock behavior. So if there's like sensible content, that it's not possible, we did lock it for this mask, actually, because it was inappropriate. But that was really interesting to see. So what I'm curious to see is really getting a more quantitative view on what is actually the different virtual visitor groups, the virtual audience groups. We have a lot of knowledge and research from gaming. We have a lot of knowledge and research from physical visits, but how does this intersect? That's one of the biggest focus points. But yeah, apart from that, we do have a really powerful feature set, and we really want to step by step now put them into the no-code editor to make the tool really more and more powerful, and work especially close with other institutions to see what they might still be lacking on the platform, and how we can make this the best infrastructure to really give these tools to curators. Because I mean, it's for me, I come from the sector. I grew up as a violinist. I spent my whole life in the arts, and I just think it's so important to do this and to go this path to making it really more accessible and more exciting, and to stay relevant for the young audiences who, yeah, they do have shifted expectations. And the goal for me is really to make it easier for institutions and make it actually feasible without having to, hire 3 more people and raise, I don't know, 150,000 euros for a one-time project,
One
to really
project.
hand that into curators and tell more stories in that way. So that's the big focus. If you're from an institution, anyone in the audience, or artist, collector, even NGO, what we talked about, and are curious, from August, we will have new spots for partnerships. So yeah, just ping me and I can show you around.
That's super great for people like who really want to do this. Like, I think so. You guys will be opening like the beta for people to start trying this, right?
It is already open. So we did have some institutions that spent a lot of time in the beta. So I would say at this point it's getting tested.
You
It's
have
still a
like
beta
some
product,
learnings.
but
Okay,
it's
super.
not very early anymore. So what you mentioned with no institution wants to be the first, that's been a big issue. But the first ones have been through it now. So
I think the more institutions see that they have a lot of like example behind them, like the more of them will go. That's super funny when you say like the appropriation of the user, because the truth is that do you know that different types of like I don't know if you've seen it, like there's like that different type of people that goes into the museum.
mhm,
And I guess like you go into there and you kind of see like when you build a platform like this, like you have to really know your users, and then you build based on that, and even that includes like blocking the objects, and things like that, especially if they're not appropriate. Like it makes me remember about like the different types of like user that goes into the museum: people who reads everything, people who take a selfie, people who just walk around, people who like to see from a different angle. And I guess based on that, like as much as that's like a jokes, but it's true. That's what's
yeah,
happening actually in the museum. And building for a like a special platforms like we do still take like that kind of behavior, right? And then based on that, like, okay, this is the good features and this the not so good feature that we need to lock.
It's true, but it's
Okay.
also so different because actually a lot of the audiences that, for instance, would use the VR version would maybe not really intersect a lot with who would normally proactively physically go to a museum. So it's a particularly exciting field to see how this kind of cultural storytelling is being perceived.
Yeah, but based on the just out of curiosity, right? Like based on the testing that you guys are doing right currently, how do you guys see like the technical savvy of users of using virtual reality for cultural experience?
Mhm. I would say it depends most on the age, to be honest. So young people
Okay.
usually they get along so quickly, and usually they just you can just give them a headset even if they haven't had one on before, and they're very quickly
Their
just
hand are built with it.
yeah, they're running around and doing everything and trying everything. And especially, I mean, Atopia's VR version, as mentioned, is built differently from the web version. The web version is very much about accessibility, and the goal for the web version is that people like my mom, who I brought up earlier, have a great time. And then the VR version is really used for people who have these headsets at home, who have different expectations maybe than someone who would just try it out somewhere for the first time. And they expect a lot of interactivity. For instance, if there's an object, they expect to be able to interact with it, to do something with it. And so for these people, or like for this also UX behavior, it's really, in my experience, a matter of age. And then you have like also exceptions sometimes. You have people, that are a bit older, I would say above
Like
30, kind of.
60.
No, actually, a lot earlier. I would say of 35 or something. I feel like under
Okay.
35, people find it very intuitive. Over 35, it's often getting a bit harder. I don't know why that is, but for young
Oh,
people, it's
really?
been really funny. We once had this demo at the Egyptian Museum during the long night of museums in Munich, and I think we gave about 250 demos at that night. It was crazy.
Wow.
There were several of us and a huge crowd, and it was so inspiring, to be honest, to see the kids. I mean, I always thought, okay, serious storytelling, I don't know if that's something that kids would really love. Usually you need special formats, but they were the most excited. Like there was one kid that actually, like, I think she was like 15 or something, was to her mom like, oh, this is like, you have to watch this. Did you see how this thing reacts when you do XYZ? And that was really really exciting for me to see. So
Of course, that they're the best marketing, you know? Yeah, of
that's
course.
true.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Annabelle. This has been like a very rich and inspiring conversation. To be honest, I do learn like a lot of things too. Thank you so much for sharing insights and giving us a closer look of how like a no-code platforms like Atopia are transforming the landscape of cultures and bringing for museum and cultural institution to bring their art off the wall and into the immersive exhibition super easy.
Thank you so much,
A
Sonia.
big
It was a pleasure.
A big thank you to our behind the scene, Federico Anselmi from XR for Europe, for making sure that everything runs smoothly. Thank you so much. And for Michael Van Roller, Managing Director of XR for Europe, for enabling XR crowd groups. If you enjoy this kind of conversation around XR and immersive design, and feel free to connect in LinkedIn with me. I share thoughts on immersive design, spatial workflow, XR product thinking, XR crowd, or more live talks and insights about like different people who are building in spatial computing, and of course XR for Europe for updates about what's happening across XR industry in Europe. And the last thing, not the least, is Atopia Space. They will be opening. They're already open actually. They're already open their platform. And if you would like to use that platforms, reach out to Annabelle, and she would be very happy to walk you through about their access with those creative and unique ideas. This episode will already live in YouTube and will be up in YouTube shortly. So help us to spread the link in your networks. It would be very appreciated for us to keep on doing this series. It would also help our speakers to get their product distributed. Thanks again, everyone, for being here, and we will see you in the next episode of Zero Events. Take care, everyone. Bye.